Okay, so let's start. So good morning, everybody. I am Vincent Legout from Gandi, and in this talk, I'm going to talk on how we use Xen, and especially Xen 4.8 at Gandi. So first, a few words about the company. So Gandi is a register. We sell domain names. But for a few years now, we've also been a hosting provider. So we are selling containers with LXC and also servers with Xen. So I've been working on the hosting side, and here I'm going to talk about how we use Xen at Gandi. So in this talk, I'm going to talk a little bit about the history of Xen at Gandi. So we've been using Xen since 2008. So what are the different versions we used and how we did the upgrade up to Xen 4.8 now. Then I'm going to talk specifically about how we did the upgrade from Xen 4.1 to Xen 4.8. So what were the good side of the upgrade, what were the few issues that we had. And finally, I'm going to talk about the features of Xen 4.8 that we use, especially live patching, but also live migration that was available in Xen 4.1, but that we haven't used that much before migrating to Xen 4.8. So first, a few words about virtualization at Gandi. So we have two kinds of VMs, one for customers and they can rent, use, and then destroy. And we also have VMs for our internal needs, for our infrastructure, for our website, our APIs and everything. And this means around 10,000 VMs. We're running hosts on x86 only. So now we only use Intel processors, usually Intel Xeon processors. We used to have AMD processors, but we thought it was easier to have the same kind of processors everywhere. It makes things easier, especially if you want to live migrate. We have both 32 and 64 bits guests. But we are trying to transition to only 64-bit VMs. So it means right now, if you want to create a VM, it has to be in 64 bits, but you can still boot 32 bits kernels, but you won't be able to do so in the next few months. For our customers, we use Xen 4.8 everywhere, so we have migrated around 6 months ago. We still have some legacy hosts running Xen 4.1, but we are in the process of migrating everything to Xen 4.8. Our VMs are mostly PV guests, so by default it's going to be PV. If the VM has some specific needs, it can be also an HVM guest. So for example, we offer FreeBSD VMs. And as FreeBSD doesn't work with PVGrub, we are going to use HVM here. Also for some internal VMs that require direct access to the network card for virtual functions, we use HVM guests. Then to orchestrate VMs, to start or stop them, we have homemade tools. So basically, we have homemade small daemon written in Python that runs inside each host, and it makes call to Excel or to retrieve some information from the Xen store, for example. We don't use any tool stack like libvirt because when we started using Xen, I don't think libvirt existed. And having our small daemon seems to be good enough for us. It's quite simple, and we can upgrade it when needed, and it does the job quite well. So we don't really need anything else right now. Then, what are the different features that we use from Xen? First, regarding the scheduler, we use the default credit scheduler. We don't need anything like real time. And for us, the credit scheduler has enough performance for now. So it's a fair scheduler, it's work conserving, so that's what we want. And we haven't looked yet at, for example, credit 2, but we may use it in the future if it becomes, for example, the default scheduler in Xen. We also haven't used CPU pools for now, so we have only one CPU pool per host. That's also because we haven't taken the time to investigate if it will give like better performance. We may want to do that in the future because we have, for example, hosts with 2 sockets, so we may want to use a NUMA performance, so to have a look at that, but it requires some changes in our provisioning tool stack, so we haven't done that yet, but we may look at that in the future. Then for the weight or the cap of each guest, we set it according to the number of vCPUs. So for example, if you have 1 vCPU, the cap will be 100, 200 for 2 vCPUs. And each vCPU has the same weight. We also don't do any pinning, so the scheduler is responsible for assigning vCPUs to physical CPUs, but we don't do any vCPU pinning. For VMs, we allow access to the net through VIF. We also use a block driver. In the background, it's ISCSI, and each VM can have an access to its console too. So we have no USB, no video, or nothing else. We do allow CPU hot plug, so you can remove or detach or attach a CPU to a VM. It seems to work well. We no longer allow memory hot plugging. Memory ballooning, we had some issues with it, so we disabled it a few months ago. And we do allow PCI pass-through for internal VMs to get access to the network card. Then for both PV and PV HVM guests, we use direct kernel boot, so no BIOS, for example. And in the Excel configuration file, we just set kernel equals to or command line or extra equals to what we want. Then about the different versions of Xen that we used. So the first public VMs were created in 2008. We started with Xen version 3.1. And then we upgraded from 3.1 to 4.1 on a regular basis up to around mid-2011. And then there was no upgrade, and eventually in 2012, 2013, we decided to move to a different virtualization solution, KVM here. And we did that for a few reasons. First, in order to upgrade our small daemon running inside the host, we would have to, some work was required. For example, to migrate from XM or Gandi to the new tool stack of Xen. We also had some issues with the different, especially the block driver back at that time. And we were attracted by some features of KVM, for example, kexec, to be able to live patch the hypervisor. We also wanted to use more hardware virtualization. So in October 2014, all the VMs were created on KVM. But then at the end of last year, so we realized that half of our VMs were still running Xen. So we had to make a choice to migrate everything to KVM or to migrate back everything to Xen. And eventually we decided to go back to Xen for some reasons. One reason was that the issues we had with Xen in 2011 were no longer valid, so we no longer have the issues that we had with the Xen tool stack. Also, we realized that with KVM, having the kernel tied with the hypervisor maybe wasn't such a good idea. For example, if you want to get the newest version of KVM, you need the latest kernel too. and we have some custom patches in our DOM0 kernel that are not easy to backport. Also, Xen has some new features, like live patching. So eventually, now we are running everything, or we try to run everything on Xen. We still have some VMs running on KVM, but we are going to migrate everything to Xen in the next few months. At least we hope so. So now that we decided to move back to Xen, all our hosts were running on Xen 4.1, so we decided to upgrade and to make the move from Xen 4.1 to Xen 4.8. The main reason was that we wanted to have a better experience for customers, so we wanted to reduce the impact. For example, we wanted to reduce the number of reboots, especially when there was a security issue. So, for example, we wanted to be able to live patch or to live migrate more our VMs. And also, Xen 4.8 had security support, so it was better in this perspective than Xen 4.1. So the first thing was to upgrade our tool stack. So our whole daemon was using Gandi on XM to make calls to Xen. So we had to upgrade it, and now it makes call to XL, and it uses a low-level Python binding of Xen. In the process of upgrading the daemon to use XL, we had a few bugs, and we had some feature requests for XL. So we did report that to the Xen devel mailing list, and those patches were accepted really quickly. So we really appreciate that, and so those patches will be in Xen 4.9. So it allows us to be able to build Xen 4.9 without almost any patch, and that's something we really like, and that's something we really want. Now to build Xen 4.8 for the hypervisor, we just git clone the stable branch of Xen 4.8, and that's basically it. For the user space, we also have almost no patch at all, and we are based on the Debian package in Debian Stretch. We backported to Debian JC. And regarding the Debian package, for example, we may want in the next, let's say, months, in 2, 3, or maybe 4 months, to upgrade to Xen 4.9. So we'll have to upgrade the Debian package. So maybe we can work with the Debian maintainers to see if we can collaborate on that. I also collaborate on my spare time on Debian, so maybe we can find a way to work with each other. And now that our hosts have been migrating to Xen 4.8, we had to decide how to switch all the different VMs to Xen 4.8. So our first thought was to live migrate all the VMs. We knew it wasn't officially supported by the Xen project, but we wanted to try anyway. So we did set up a test infrastructure, and the first migrations, or all the migrations, went quite well. So the VMs migrated fine. The VMs seemed to work fine. But after a few days and even a few weeks, we had some crashes, and we had some disruptions. And we tried to investigate. We did report those traces to the Xen devel mailing list, but that wasn't that easy to find what was the issue. We thought maybe in the guest kernel, maybe because the suspend and resume didn't work that well, there was some issues. Unfortunately, we didn't investigate that much because in the meantime, we had a security issue in Xen, and we had to take a quick decision. So we decided to reboot all the VMs and then to reboot them on Xen 4.8. And for the customers, we said that it was a security issue. We had to reboot them, but then they'll have Xen 4.8 later. And hopefully we'll be able to live patch and live migrate, such that we will reduce the downtime for them. Then when we migrated to Xen 4.8, we wanted also to use the latest features of Xen, so we did upgrade also how we create VMs for when you want to create a new VM, especially regarding disks. Before, when you were creating a VM, the default root disk had no partition, and previously old MBR partition, and now we switched everything to GPT. We do that because we want VMs that we create today to be able to use the new features of Xen, even in that might be available in a few years or for the next release of Xen. So we think that creating GPT disks right now, the VM will be able to use, for example, UVFI or OVMF, even if it's only available in like a few releases of Xen. We also switched from a custom kernel to PVGrub by default for PV guests because we don't really want to maintain our own guest kernels. It takes time to build them, to apply all the different security patches for Linux, and you have to test them to release them. So it's easier and I think better for the customers if they can just use the kernel from their distributions. For PVGrub, we may want to switch to PVH2 when it becomes available in Xen, maybe in like next year. We know PVGrub may not work with PVH2, so we might have to find a different solution for that. Or maybe, I don't know if it makes sense to port PVGrub to PVH2, so we'll have to think about what we can do here. And with that, we still need to support old VMs, so the VMs which, or at least the disks, which were created like 10 years ago or in 2008, we still want to be able to boot them, so with a whole partition table, and this can be quite whole, but we still want to support this kind of VMs. So we switched to PVGrub, so we no longer, well, we don't really want to build our own DOMU guest kernels, and we used to carry a few patches for them, so we had at least like a couple of issues with that. The first one we have is a small one, is with, for example, the default kernel in Debian JC. It's based on 3.16. We have some issues with MCE. Machine check exception. So if we, as we activate CPU hot plug, I think the VM tends to crash after a few minutes when there is a MCE thing running. So now we run the VMs with the no MCE command line, but it seems to be fixed in the latest versions of Linux. I think we no longer have this issue with Xen 4.2 or with Linux 4.2 or 4.3, for example. We also have different issue with regarding disks, so the block driver. So for the VMs, we want to be able to attach a disk and then detach it later. So when we do the Excel block attach, then the disk is automatically mounted inside the VM with custom UDEV rules. And we had a patch that if you do the Excel block detach and the disk is still mounted inside the VM, then it's going to be unmounted automatically inside the VM. And it's not the case with the upstream kernel. So for example, if you do the Excel block detach while the disk is still mounted, it won't unmount the disk inside the VM. So we sent a patch for that. We don't really know if it's the right approach to do that, but that's still something we really like to fix, so that you don't have to the disk can be automatically unmounted inside the VM when you detach it with Xen. And we have to do that because we don't run any daemon inside the VM. So the only thing we have inside the VMs are custom UDEV rules, nothing else. So it's the only option for us to be able to detach automatically the disk. So then I'm going to talk about the features of Xen 4.8 that we use. So first, live patching. So we've been using live patching since for like around 6 months since we upgraded to Xen 4.8. So we've been using that for a couple of security issues when we had some patches to apply. And we use the default Xen tools to create the payload, to apply it on the hosts. And in our experience, it works well. We didn't have any crash or any bug for the host or for the VMs. So we are really happy for that because it makes security issues less scary because we can apply or live patch all the hosts quite quickly. One thing we try to do is to not keep too many levels of live patches for too long inside the host. So eventually we want to live migrate VMs so that if there is a stop start, the VM is going to start on a fresh host, so that we don't keep a host with too many levels of patches. I don't know if that's something the Xen project recommends. I'd be happy to hear about what is the best practice here. Then about live migration. So it was available before. I know it's not a new feature, but now we've been using that for also 6 months quite a lot. And we think that's really useful and it works quite well too. We use it especially when there is a security issue that cannot be live patched, when, for example, it's too large to be live patched. And we do that for all our VMs, and we built a custom tool so that we can on a regular basis live migrate all of our VMs. And this tool does his job according to the CPU of nodes, what are the different features of the CPUs that are in use. Also, the number of VMs per nodes and the number of free nodes, for example. And the final objective is to have almost no VM downtime, so we want our VMs to be always up, and we want to be able to do some kind of rolling updates, so that eventually we want to migrate a VM so that a host can be rebooted, or we can upgrade to a new version, just a small percentage of our set of nodes, for example. Regarding live migration, we still had a few issues with it, but right now it seems to work quite nicely. So for example, for the latest campaign of live migration, less than 0.5% of all the VMs had to be stop-start. Usually that was because the kernels were in a bad state. So if you can't suspend, for example, I think it's not going to work. So the VM is still running in the source host, but live migration doesn't seem to work. So we have to start the VM. So it's kind of a good way to find what are the VMs which are in a bad state, so that we can send an email to the customer, for example. But we still want to do better. So for every live migration, I think we are getting better. And also we had some issues with some of our custom kernels, especially one based on Linux 3.10, 32 bits. I don't know if that's something that only happened to us, but as we're in the process of migrating everything to 64 bits, we didn't investigate that much. And now we only have around less than 100 VMs running on the Linux kernel 3.10. So as a conclusion, we are quite satisfied with Xen, and we are quite happy that we chose to come back to Xen. We have been using live patching and live migration, and we're happy because it allows us to have almost no downtime for our VMs. So that's really something we like. we like how security issues are managed. It means we are in the embargo mailing list, so it gives us a week or 2 weeks to apply all the security patches. So that's also quite nice for us. For the small downsides we had with Xen, so there have been quite a few or several security issues lately. So it means more work because also we have to live migrate or live patch all of our hosts. But in one sense it means that I know there have been some fuzzing and some security research on Xen, so that's also quite good. Another thing we'd like is if, as I said, if we create a VM right now, we wanted to be able to use the features of Xen that are going to be out in maybe 1 or 2 years. So we try always to find what will be the next features of Xen in maybe 2 years and how we can use them. So for example, that's why we decided to move to GPT disks to be able to use OVMF. That would be nice if we can do that for all the different features of Xen. What we'd like to do, so we have some soft testing in Gandi. We'd like to do more tests, so I don't know if that could be integrated into the Xen, the testing platform of Xen. So we want to push tests on the features we rely on. So we haven't looked too much on that, but that's something we really want to do. So I know there is, for example, OSS test. I don't know if that's something we can also use or we can also help with that. Would be really happy to do more testing of Xen. We also want to stay as close as possible to upstream. So if we don't have any patches inside our trees, that's the best for us because it means less work if we want to upgrade to newer versions. So that's what we try to do, to report patches as soon as we have anything to patch. And would like also to try new features or new releases as soon as possible. So right now we are using Xen 4.8. We haven't tried 4.9 yet, but I think we'll try to do that in the next, maybe not during the summer, but in maybe September, October, we'll try to in a progressive way to move to Xen 4.9. And in the future, maybe also we'll try to use the new features like PVH2 if it allows us to have better performance for our VMs. Okay, so thank you very much. I'd be very happy to take any question here or even later during the conference. I'll be here till tomorrow evening.
Questions, anyone? None? Really?
How have you found live patching overall? Particularly building live patches and testing them, because this is something that I haven't really had feedback from okay. A lot of other people.
We do follow there is a wiki page. I think there is a documentation for that. So we used like there is a tool with a specific Git repository. So that's how we build our live patch with also different layers of like on top of also an existing live patch. I don't think we found that too hard to use. Also the tool to apply or to load unload a patch. We thought it was also like not that difficult to use. I think it's a bit more. It takes more time to build to actually build the payload, but yeah, that's how we use it. Yeah, nothing else. I don't know if that answers your question, but
yeah, I'm just wanting feedback.
Okay.
Anyone else? All right, I have a question then. So you mentioned that one of the issues you had was to do with like unclear roadmap. Well, yeah, maybe you can expand a bit on that. That would interest me as well. Like, at least on some of the bigger features, maybe we can do a bit better.
So, yeah, we want to, for example, I was mentioning like UEFI and OVMF. Yeah, that's because we were wondering what kind of disk we want to use to create new VMs. And once you have a disk, it's difficult to change or to ask someone to change, like especially if there is a GPT or no partition, you can't do that easily. So we really want to know that in advance so that if we create a VM right now, it's still okay, like in 2 years when the customer wants to change. People, I think, at least most of the VMs we have, most of our customers don't change VMs that often. I don't know if it's a good practice or not, but that's how it is. And so we really want to have something like that can be used for a few years at least.
Yeah, maybe we can have a chat about that over beer or something tonight. All right.
Okay.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you.
Thank you.